Hey everyone, I'm up here in the Santa Monica Mountains and today's video is 5 tips on how to take outstanding photos of the moon. So, absolutely essential to have a good sturdy tripod, not just for taking photos of the moon, but for any landscape. Photographers should have a good tripod. In fact, I read somewhere that many people often skimp on their tripod. You know, they spend $3,000 on a fantastic camera and then 150 bucks on a tripod, and it always seems weird that you would spend that much on a camera and the thing that's holding the camera off the ground and keeping it from crashing into the rocks is a $150 piece of kit. So definitely worth investing in a good solid tripod, and absolutely essential if you want to get good photos of the moon, because the moon's moving relatively quickly and the chances are you're going to be using a pretty long lens, 200 millimeters or longer, so you can't handhold and get a nice sharp image of the moon. It just ain't going to happen. So tip number 1, get a good tripod. So planning your trip is another essential part to having a successful photo shoot, especially with something like the moon. And what I do, the first thing I do is I go onto one of the apps. I look at either Photopills or the Photographer's Ephemeris. Both are fantastic apps. They both kind of do the same thing. I think Photopills is perhaps has a little more to it, and maybe a little easier to use, but both are excellent and definitely worth the money. I think their Photopills was $3. The Photographer's Ephemeris was like something like 10. But they're absolutely essential for any landscape photographer, in my opinion. So I look at both those. I figure out where the moon's gonna rise or set depending on what I'm gonna shoot, and you can actually go into a location and find out exactly where the moon is going to be at any particular time. Obviously the weather forecast is another critical thing. I knew it was going to be a bit hazy up here today, but it's I'm still hopeful, but it's perhaps not the best day. But I was looking at the weather forecast all day today, just because we had some clouds earlier and they've definitely cleared out the way. So that's tip number 2, planning your trip. So another tip for a successful photo of the moon is planning your composition, and this is a tricky one because it kind of depends on what it is you want to do. And this is just my opinion on this. If the best shots of the moon, if you really want to get close up and get the craters and the shadows on the moon, then shooting a full moon is not the best time to do that, because the sun is shining directly onto the moon. There's no shadows on the moon, and you don't really see the definition as well. I'll show you a picture here of a full moon shot, and you can sort of see what I mean. So if you're looking for that kind of shot, and I'll show you one right now I took just from my backyard a couple of months ago. This was at about 3/4 of the 3/4 full, and you can see part of the moon is in the shadow, but you can see the craters quite clearly, and this one came out really well. However, many people want to shoot the full moon, and that's great, but the thing with the full moon, I find that you need to have something else to make the shot, something else in the frame. And if you're going to be shooting with a 200mm lens, then that whatever that's going to be is going to be quite a long way away. So this comes down to planning where you're going to be is another important aspect for shooting the moon. About lenses and settings with my little helper here. Where are you, Dylan? Dylan, you know what that is?
Killing a veggie.
A teleconverter. Pretty good. Pretty close. What's this thing?
Camera.
Camera. All right. Okay. So this is my go-to lens for shooting the moon and pretty much most other things as well. I use this probably 75% of the time when I'm out in the field. It's my 70 to 200 f5.6. I absolutely love this lens. It's brilliant, and I often combine it with my my teleconverter, so I can go up to 400 millimeters, and that I can't go down to anything less than f.8 with the aperture. So or anything greater than f.8, I should say, with the aperture. So I have to sort of be aware of the shutter speed when I'm using the teleconverter on the lens as well. But these two pieces of kit are absolutely great. And here's a photo I took using my teleconverter with this lens, and as you can see, it came out really well. The detail is remarkable. So those are my this is my go-to lens. I occasionally will shoot with you know, the wide angle, but usually the moon isn't the main subject. It's something else. The moon just adds to the shot. It tends to be fairly small, and I'll show you an example from Mount Rainier, as you can see here. And in terms of shutter speed, I try and go as high as possible. I try and get the image as sharp and as clear as I can. So as I mentioned, tripod is essential, high shutter speed, low f number, down as much as I can, and that's it. Those are my settings. And as you'll see in the next tip, I tend to lean towards underexposing the moon just a little bit and then bringing some of the detail back. So for my last tip on photographing the moon, I wanted to bring you into Lightroom just to show you the importance of getting the exposure of the moon right in the field. And here's a classic example of getting it wrong. So here's a photo I took the other night, and as you can see, the moon is completely overexposed. It's just one great big white disk. And you might think, well, okay, well, we can get some of those details back in Lightroom. But with an image like this, even if I take the exposure down, nothing, bring down the highlights, nothing, no detail there at all. And we can't get the detail back because there was none there in the first place. Here's the second one I took from a similar angle. And you can see it's slightly overexposed. It's perhaps not the best photo to show you, but at least you can see some of the detail here. So we have something we can work with. So for instance, if I take down the exposure just a little bit, down to about there, you can see already that's made quite a nice difference. Maybe take the highlights down and raise the shadows up a little bit. Take the blacks down quite a lot. Maybe to about there. Maybe a little bit of contrast. A little bit of clarity. And you can see the image is so much better than that one there, which there's nothing you could do with. Nothing you can do with that one. This one here, you have something you can work with. So very important to get the exposure as really sort of try and nail it when you're in the field. But if anything, err on the side of underexposed. You can always bring it back a little bit. Anything that's too overexposed, like that first image, is lost completely. So that's the end of my 5 beginner tips on shooting. The baby's crying in the background. That's the end of my 5 beginner tips on shooting the moon. I hope you enjoyed the vlog, and if you like this kind of stuff and would like to see more, please do the old subscribe thing down there. Give me a thumbs up, send me a comment. I'm always happy to hear what people have to say. So see you soon. Bye.